Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this big game. So glad to see so many people from different parts of the country that are joining us. This is our national game. My name is Alex Boston. I'm the manager of the local government offsite housing accelerator at the Zero Emission Innovation Center. We have a great event today, and it's anticipated by lots of people because in the corridors of the legislature here in British Columbia and definitely in the national capital, there's a big debate about whether panelized or modular construction is the way to go. So we thought we'd convene this big game so that they could have a face off and figure out who's going to come on top. Um, I am going to just give you a little bit of a lowdown of what's going to be happening. We're in the pregame warm up and welcome, and I'd like to say that I am on the unceded ancestral territory of the Tsleil-Waututh and the Squamish on the other side of the Burrard, the best side of the Burrard Inlet, and we are all on ancestral territory of different nations across the country from whom we can learn so much, notably about how to manage our forests. So the big goals for today's game are to foster awareness, interest, and action in offsite construction. We always have an emphasis on local government, but it's important that we have to grow our capacity across a whole number of sectors right across the supply chain. We are going to explore the strengths and limitations of the two dominant approaches to offsite construction. Shortly, we're going to move into the first period. What is your game? Where we're going to learn a little bit more about panelized and modular construction. You then will all have an opportunity to weigh in to see how attentive you were and understand modular and panelized unique advantages. And then we're going to actually transition to why each of these teams are on the defensive. We're going to have some color commentary by Natalie Douglas from the Zero Emission Innovation Center on high performance prefab. And then we want to figure out how we can score more goals. Then I hope we'll have an opportunity to have a post-game interview with questions from the most important players in the room, which are you, because there are so many great players across this country and across this province. So, uh, why are we interested in offsite construction? From my perspective, it really is an ace card. It's the only way in the housing sector that we can deliver on affordability, climate, and the economy. And it's not about sacrificing any one of them. Um, we will never get to the top of the step code near zero new construction without transitioning industry-wide to offsite construction. The quality and cost control that can be deployed on an assembly line is just so much better that can what be done on site. And if we take a look at the challenges that exist in our forestry economy in British Columbia and other parts of the country, and then we look at the strength of all of these small town players, so many small town players that have these manufacturing operations, they're adding huge value to what we harvest from our forests. We can see the huge opportunity that offsite construction affords small town local economic development in Canada. This program is situated in the Zero Emission Innovation Center, which is driving deep carbon reductions in the urban context across British Columbia. I'd like to underscore this is our challenge. This is our performance track record over the last couple of decades and then some. We've been manufacturing, building about 200,000, 220,000 housing units a year. only about 20,000 of them, a little under 10%, have been built off-site. The expectation nationally is this is what we do. This is a hockey stick curve. If you're familiar with it in the climate context, but this is what we're confronting in when it comes to trying to deliver on our housing targets. And I will underscore this has never been done anywhere, with the exception of post-war events when there's a huge opportunity to reallocate labor and a number of other things that are going on. Uh, this is pretty much impossible unless we do a huge amount of capacity building. And as astute and as commendable as the federal government's agenda is on housing, one of the things that I think is forgotten is that offsite building manufacturing is just not this cog that we can stick into the existing construction machine and it continues to grind on in the same way. It's not going to happen that way. We need to build an ecosystem to support offsite housing construction. And there's huge changes that are required right across the supply chain, from how we manufacture our primary forest products to what architects and engineers do, to what local governments do, building officials and planners, to what real estate agents do, what manufacturing trades and construction trades do, what our post-secondary sector does. There's a huge amount of capacity building that's necessary for us to learn a whole bunch of new ways of doing things. And a lot of this is about figuring out how we work together much more effectively. And how we play more effectively together brings us to our national game, a face-off, and we're going to be featuring Jason Friesen, who not only is a senior manager with Freeport Industries, he's also a counselor in West Kelowna, so he has some deep insights into some of the challenges and opportunities within the local government context. Many of you from British Columbia may have seen a Freeport Industries home as you're chewing on a corn dog at the PNE, because for a half decade he had the Freeport Industries had the PNE prize home at the PNE. And Jan Pratschke is from Collective Carpentry. He's the CEO there, and it's a growing enterprise in Invermere. They're award-winning. They're doing really innovative work in the commercial and the institutional space. Clearly, most of their work is in residential, and I hope you have an opportunity to check both of them out. You'll see links to both of their work. So here we're going to get into the first period. What is your game? And I'm going to ask Jason first of all, what is your strategic approach and why are you such a powerhouse?
Thanks, Alex. First off, just want to acknowledge that I'm repping our local hockey team in the BCHL, the West Kelowna Warriors, who are currently league leaders into this new great season. Just gonna grab my screen here. Yeah, so what is volumetric modular? Think of volumetric modular as the full strength line on the ice. We've got the whole play coming together even before we hit the rink. We're building complete three-dimensional units, including walls, floors, ceilings, electrical, plumbing, millwork, and fixtures. They're all finished and inspected under one roof even before we leave the plant. We're not sending the smaller pieces or smaller components. The modules are finished plays, game ready to stack, connect, and drop onto site. Whether it's a single module, a multi-module townhouse, or a stacked apartment, Modular delivers precision, speed, and repeatable performance. Every shift starts strong because we're 80 to 90% of the game happens within our own house, not in the corners of a muddy job site. So that's just a quick overview. Some of the things that are unique we go over this briefly, is, fixed schedule and price. And, it's something that's rare in today's leagues. And then where most teams lose control over scope creep, weather delays, labor shortages, poor coordination, we lock that all down in a controlled environment. We're mitigating every major project risk, but even before the puck drops. So that's a brief overview on modular.
Thanks so much, Jason. And we're going to move over to Jan. And I'm going to make sure, Jan, that you are able to share the team that you're sporting, because not everyone can appreciate your retro nature. But Jan, what is your strategic approach, and why is Team Panelized such a powerhouse?
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Jason. I'm just going to make sure I can share first to get that piece of administration done.
You are
Everybody see
sharing.
it? Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I have a retro Vancouver Canucks jersey on. A little bit of a heartbreaker, as you guys know. If there are any Vancouver Canucks fans out there, it's not always easy, but it's worth it in the long run. You got to stay focused on the end game. So let me just give you all an introduction to Collective Carpentry. So we are now a prefab panelizer. We were a contractor when we first started in 2008, and we enjoyed contracting, but we were always building high performance homes. And it's really difficult to build high quality, high performance homes on site. It's not impossible, and lots of people are doing it, but it's doing it despite the weather. And we chose to take care of our tender bodies and move to an indoor environment, and I've been really enjoying that. If you don't shoot, you can't score. Can't score if you don't shoot. So yeah, we took a chance back in 2012 and decided to focus on prefab. And this image here is a delightful image to us, showing that we have some clients that are developers, and they built a big project. They took a chance, and they're renting it out for long-term ownership, and that was really exciting for us. Our focus is to elevate the quality of construction in North America through a focus on craft, innovation, efficiency, people, and the environment. So why prefab in general? I think most people will understand that prefab construction can give you cost and timeline certainty, or at least predictability. One of the major benefits is simultaneous activities. So as soon as a prefab model is ready to go, we are in fabrication usually at the same time as a foundation is being prepared and other site work is happening. That just means that I can honestly say more than 95 times out of 100, we are delivering, we are shipping when people are stripping forms on foundations. We're waiting a very minimal amount of time, the least amount of time possible, a week or two, and then we're ready for installation. It's very rare for us to not take advantage of every opportunity to keep a project flowing really quickly. The other advantage is precision and quality control that can just come with being in an indoor environment. Jason and all prefab shares that availability. Crew safety and wellness is hugely important, and as well, just there's an opportunity for reduced waste as well. So, and then why panels more specifically? In my mind, modular is just a little old fashioned. We're seeing that modular buildings are often being built in the same way that homes have always been constructed, but they're built in an indoor environment. So they're taking advantage of lots of opportunities for optimization of factory environments and factory efficiencies, but they're not always pushing the envelope of what's possible with respect to equipment and some of the precision engineering and equipment and software that panelizers are often using. So we're seeing some really exciting developments in panelization in BC, Canada, and around the world with respect to integration of robotics, semi-automation that we have at Collective Carpentry, software like CADWork and Revit plugins like AutoCAD, all sorts of really cool integrations now happening with other softwares. And I think we're just in a really exciting time with software to machine to fabrication integration. And I think that's where panelization really shines. So for collective carpentry, we have in our toolkit, sometimes it feels like our toolkit's a little too big, but we have the ability to reach just about any performance standard. We're building open panels, closed panels. We're working with CLT, with steel. We're working with other prefab shops quite a bit. You know, there have been times when we were over capacity or finding that other prefab companies, you know, needed a little bit of work, and we've been able to share our digital tools and our digital outputs in the form of shop drawings and machine files, and actually work together to turn prefab projects around really fast. And I think that's an opportunity moving forward, especially as bigger projects come up. I think we're going to see that they're not ready, and then all of a sudden it's go time. And I think there's a huge opportunity to work together to not only have simultaneous activities with respect to site and shop, but to have multiple shops working together to fast forward and to really divide the overall prefab time, you know, by 2, by 3, by 4. So we have a history of working with other prefab companies from, you know, from Ontario all the way in the south down to New Mexico and in BC on the west coast with TAG and BC Pacific. So we have a history of doing that quite well. And as well, we work well with steel fabricators as well, and with CLT, whether they're from Europe or whether they're domestic. So I think it's just a process that we have a, you know, a standardized process to deliver a custom result, and that process can work well with others. As well with, you know, we're doing architectural design, prefab design, fabrication, logistics, installation. So having that full ownership over a project is just a wonderful feedback loop. It keeps us immediately aware of our shortcomings and hopefully our successes as well. I'll keep it going pretty quickly here. Generally, our process is very heavy on the planning end. We are really requiring full team participation. We need to front load the planning, the time and the cost, and we need to essentially create the digital twin. I wrote in brackets a digital twin. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty about who owns that model. How can there be only one model? And I still think we're not quite there with respect to BIM, but we're getting there. And this is just such a great way for us. You know, we're doing high performance prefab, so we're trying to attain more than just architecture and structure, but we're also trying to have high performance buildings, so they're also airtight, continuous insulation with, you know, minimal thermal bridges, weather tight, rain screen on, ready for siding. We're really trying to be a good partner to everybody, of course, but we determine it to be a success when the trades that follow us are just able to, in a streamlined way, just continue working. So I just had a conversation with a roofer, and they were asking, you know, do I really need to be ready on the second week of January? And, you know, our install will be finished on the end of the first week in January. And yes, they do, you know, they do need to be ready to do that. So having that opportunity to work with trades and actually help them with their timelines will help, you know, realize some of this upfront planning and cost and make the whole project quicker, which ultimately is the goal, to reduce risk, pardon me.
Okay. We're going to wrap it up there, Jan, if that's fine. And then we're going to move back to Jason. And Jason, you weren't able to share your slides, and we're not going to have you share them right now, but I want you to lean into Jan a little bit. He was starting to get you in the corners there, a little bit of a shoulder check, but I want you to tell me what is something really unique that Team Modular can do that Team Panelized can't, and what's one of the real weaknesses of Team Panelized?
You know, ultimately, I think, look, Panelized is really Modular's farm team. It's developing great players, but we're already skating in the big leagues. I say that in jest. You know, inside a factory, you know, we are creating panels. We're creating panels that meet passive house standards. We're creating panels that are already insulated. You know, some of the other advantages are that, you know, where panels are coming out of the factory ready for siding, 9 times out of 10, we can be delivering with the siding. And ultimately, at the end of the day, where Modular wins the game is that, you know, we're controlling much more of the process. We're not having to, we're mitigating all the risks before we get out there. Weather delays and labor shortages are really just pylons that we're able to skate around. We've already got our roster in the plant. So modular turns chaos into choreography. It's predictable, repeatable, and built to the same high standard. We don't have the scope creep. We don't have, a lot of the inflationary challenges and delays that often exist. So really, it's just taking it to the next level. That's not to say panels aren't high quality. We just manage much more of the quality and a greater percentage of the quality for the project from start to finish.
And
I will comment just briefly. Jan gave me a good elbow there and was talking about technology and things like that. And I think currently in Western Canada, there isn't a lot of automation within the modular industry. It is something that a lot of companies are looking to incorporate, and I don't think we're that far away from it. But we are still using the same technologies in the way of BIM and Revit and incorporating those design technologies into our scope.
so, Jan, I'm going to give you a brief opportunity to get your elbows up again, and in less than 30 seconds, your most compelling strategic advantage and a weakness of modular.
Yeah, no, fair point there, Jason. I'll take that. I'll take that hit. I think what we see is that panelization has the opportunity to add more and more value. We do not, as of yet, put siding on in the shop. And we have done some test panels where we have put windows and doors in the shop, and we can do it. We don't yet do it because we don't necessarily see it as being the ultimate, the low-hanging fruit, if you will. But I think where panelization succeeds is it has huge opportunity for integration of other components. And I can absolutely see where modular does succeed in that regard, maybe at the cost of some design and performance flexibility. That would be my only stick up point to retort.
Jason, I want to lean into something that Natasha raised in the chat, and there's great commentary in there. And this is a challenge. I think Team Modular is performing better and better and better, and on par with Panelized in many respects. But you carry a weight on your shoulders. It's pretty heavy, and that is kind of some poor performing players in the history of modular that I think challenge the entire prefab sector. There's this reputational challenge that exists. Is that fair? And if it is, how do we overcome that?
Yeah, I think some of that stigma and the challenges goes back to a long way, when there were a lot of manufacturers that were trying to build the cheapest and the fastest product out there. The industry has struggled to find our footing, and in some cases that has produced bad experiences for developers. And we are fighting against that. Now, that being said, we have seen a lot of those weaker players and the weaker teams drop out of the league. And what we're finding is that those groups and those teams that are still producing high quality, that are collaborative in scope, really trying to work with our clients, those are the companies that are sticking around. So we do have a hurdle that we need to overcome, and I think the players that are left are still working pretty hard to make that happen.
Yeah, Jason, I think this is something the entire offsite construction sector has to tackle, and also much more broadly, it's something that we have to underscore. And I think it's an unfair reputational hit that the entire prefab sector has, that we're not performing as well as the on-site sector because modular panelized, it's just not the case. I'm going to have a little bit of there's some great questions coming up. We're going to start to address some of them in here. Going to have a pop quiz. So everybody, like, make sure you have your fingers ready in the on your keyboards because this is an opportunity for you out there to weigh in. I want you to, and it really tests the strategic advantage of modular or panelized. What was Canada's first passive house standard building? Does anyone know? Um, and was it modular or panelized? I don't see anyone coming in on the chat, and I'm really shocked about that. It's the Lost Lake Passive House, built in 2009, and it was panelized. And why was it panelized? It was the only way to deliver on the passive house performance in a really cost-effective way. And a couple of people really weighed in on this. The strategic advantage, transporting those panels, those CLT insulated panels, they had to come all the way from Austria at that point in time. That's where the performance could really be hit. The transportation costs were way more effectively managed with a panelized approach. And you also, for good modular builders, they invest a lot of money in ensuring the integrity of their modular units in the transportation process. That costs money as well. Okay, next question. What was Canada's first multi-family passive house standard building in the country, and was it modular or panelized? Anyone know? We don't have anyone now. You guys are all going to fail. Okay. It was a Bella Bella Hospital staff housing. Mid-coast of British Columbia, and it was modular. And its big strategic advantage where there were really limited skilled local trades up there. The other advantage, it was built in Agassiz, and it was shipped by truck not too far to Maple Ridge, put on barges, and then trucked out of or shipped out of the Fraser River and up the coast to Bella Bella. So they were able to cost effectively figure out how to deliver on that on those transportation challenges. Canada's first prefab 5-story building in the country, and was it modular or panelized? Oh, Norm got that. Okay. Jacobson Hall. Also, the last two, this project and the last project, were built by Metric Modular, now Fort Modular in Abbotsford. And the big strategic advantage was speed. Trinity Western University needed to be able to admit students in September. The contract was awarded in December to Metric Modular, and they were able to manufacture and assemble on site in 9 months, grant occupancy, and have the students walk in during Frosh Week. And one of the take-homes for everybody out there in local government land is I'm pretty sure that the township of Langley created a unique height allowance because building with modular, you actually are doubling your roofs and your floors. So typical height allowances for your stories have to be adjusted a little bit to accommodate offsite. And that's one of the many growing pains that we go through. This is King Edward Villa, and a number of you were speaking about this. Is this modular or panelized? I'm looking for that in the chat. And I don't think you'll be able to lean in on the strategic advantage, but really, do we know what the strategic advantage is? It's the design element. Some really funky angles that existed in this construction. This would have been difficult to do for modular. And I saw somebody weigh in who actually underscored there is a lot of design flexibility, and I would concur that is correct. It's just that it isn't the norm in the modular sector, but there are some beautiful, amazing design innovations in the modular sector. Some of them incorporating some unique elements. Can modular and panelized ever play on the same team? You bet they can. You know, there's a whole bunch of examples in different parts of the world. This plant prefab in California, huge number of projects that incorporate both modular and panelized. Volumetric bathroom pods being incorporated into panelized buildings. Not a lot happening in Canada, but it's happening in full force in other places. Love this project, a modular project, little transformer activity here, all these panelized foldouts, and there you get an ADU, Rohe Homes here in Metro Vancouver. There's huge opportunities for both panelized and modular to work on the same team. So to the score here, I think it's really clear that Team Modular performs better in some situations and Team Panelized better in others. And there was a question around low construction costs. I would say that it really varies from project to project and from developer or builder to builder, depending on the amount of experience. It's not uncommon for it to be 3, 4, 5%, but often on first projects, it's nothing and you might lose money. But once you develop a process and figure out a project management routine that works effectively and figured out your systems, but also the local governments that you can work with, you're able to deliver at even more than 5% below cost. And there's a lot more that we can do to reduce the cost of both modular and panelized. But that means a whole bunch of changing policies and practices across the supply chain. And that's where we are right now. I think Team Modular and Team Panelized are on the same team overwhelmingly, and we're on the defensive because of traditional policies and practices that inadvertently increase cost, risk, and time. So here we are in the second period. I want to ask you why Jason and why Jan, and I'll start with you, Jason. Why are you spending so much time in the corners and why are you spending so much time on the defensive?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Maybe I just saw some comments float in there regarding metric modular and ATCO and everything else. So maybe give a little bit of insight. Metric modular was actually the predecessor to that was Britco. And then the Fort Modular, not directly, but was actually a successor to Shelter Manufacturing, inadvertently, not fully directly. And then ATCO actually just purchased NRB, which was Horizon North, which was Dexterra. So just to clarify a little bit who the players are. Why are we in the corners? I think a few things. You talked a little bit about price comparison, a fixed price versus an estimated bid. Modular shows a complete transparent cost up front. What we have found is many traditional bids are lowball estimates that balloon once the puck's dropped. We look expensive at the face-off, but often at the end of the game, we would win in total cost. Moving over to bylaws really quickly, too many municipalities and local governments still have a reference to manufactured homes. And the confusion over manufactured homes, modular construction, and mobile homes. Instead of just recognizing that off-site, whether it's panelized or whether it's volumetric modular, is simply just a process or a method of building. So they really need to put their focus on certification like CSA 277 and stop treating modular like a different product type. We don't reference there's not a building code out there that references panelized, to my knowledge, but they still do put modular into a category, if you will, when really it isn't. And then there's a perception. There's a perception of stigma. There's still this old narrative that modular has to look cheap or is built to a lesser standard, the mobile and manufactured home days of yore. In fact, some may have seen a recent post from a player on the Panelized team that grossly misrepresented what a modular project is and what it can be. Modular construction today can and does meet both the aesthetic design and performance standards required and desired by local and building and energy standards. And then I guess lastly, I think one of the struggles the industry is having is an inconsistent demand. So we talked about the opportunities and the availability for us to, for the modular industry to incorporate technologies and invest in bigger manufacturing facilities. The lack of full-scale adoption of modular across the construction sector creates an inconsistent demand, which really makes it tough for manufacturers to attract and maintain a strong roster, as well as justify reinvestment and expansion. So until there's a consistent buy-in from both public and private developers, we're skating a little short-handed. We're running efficient shifts, but we're struggling to get enough ice time to build full momentum.
Going to hand that over to you, Jan. What's your sense of why we're on the defensive?
Well, I think I could say a lot of similarities with what Jason said, and I do see the comments as well. I see a pretty strong agreement with the idea that panelization and modular together might be the secret for sure. But I think for us, we are a small to medium enterprise, and we are trying to continue to be a viable company, a viable operation over the long term, and we've reached some profitability, and all of that despite having quite low resource utilization. We are general contractors. We used to actually do general contracting, and we still in some ways operate like that, meaning a 4-day week, 10 hours a day, obviously some overtime during installation work, but we're not really maximizing our capacity, and we're still viable, and we're still proving to be cost effective in lots of places. So I think what ultimately will make us cost favorable will just be more demand, and I don't want to put that responsibility on someone else. We as a company have to prove our worth and prove that we have a service that people need and that solves problems. So I don't want to say that is somebody else's responsibility, but yeah, demand that ebbs and flows with seasons, and demand that ebbs and flows with geopolitical situations like tariffs and things like that certainly don't help. But the ultimate goal for us would be to see steady enough demand that facilitates continued investment, more people, more equipment, more tooling, more education, and we would therefore be able to produce more per overhead dollar, which will see our costs come down. And then I think once that reaches a tipping point that we're almost at, I think we're going to start to see a huge increase in demand for our panelization, for everybody's panelization, and hopefully for everybody's offsite work in general.
I want to really lean into one point that both of you made so emphatically, and that's the imperative growing demand. And I thought that was astute by the federal government. Before it was even the government, it was in a campaign platform. One of the key points was methodically growing demand. And it just has to happen. And Bill Ozeroff mentioned it in the chat there. It's a shame that provinces haven't stepped up to really grow demand, but it's the single most important priority, is creating a number of demand generation strategy wedges for different types of housing and building that can create some investor confidence so we can expand our manufacturing capacity. In fact, there is latent capacity that can be harnessed. So many of these innovative manufacturers that we see don't have to expand that much. They can add the number of shifts to their existing facilities in different parts of the country. I want to go make a transition now, and we're going to have a brief intermission, and we're going to have a bit of color commentary from Natalie Douglas, who is the manager of the Zero Emission Building Exchange at the Zero Emission Innovation Center.
Thanks so much, Alex. Yeah, a really fruitful conversation. Always lovely to see how much engagement there is in the chat on this topic. I'm just going to offer a little bit of context about ZEIC, about ZEBEX, our why, as to why there is this beautiful nexus of interest and beautiful nexus between the prefab space and the decarbonization space. So I manage ZEBEX, but I'll speak really briefly to the organization that hosts this housing accelerator that Alex has spoken to really briefly, and ZEBEX and why it could help this conversation and help move this work forward. So on this note, the Zero Emissions Innovation Center is a charitable organization founded approximately 4 years ago. Our mission really is to accelerate and scale climate action innovation within BC in the building, transportation, and renewable energy sectors. Currently, most of the work that we do really is in buildings, and that's kind of why we're really interested in this topic. We want to see more housing built well. We want the processes improved, and we want to reduce the emissions associated with it. ZEIC hosts a program called the Zero Emissions Building Exchange, and that's a program that I manage, and it's one that has grappled with this question of how panelized versus modular, performs in action, where the opportunities are, and we look at it through the lens of high performance and low carbon buildings. So ZEBEX was first adopted as a program of ZEIC in 2022, but it was actually established before that, 4 years earlier in 2018. So over the years, ZEBEX's focus has definitely broadened from new and existing large and small buildings, operational and embodied emissions, mitigation and adaptation. But at the end of the day, we're still working to accelerate the adoption of zero emissions buildings in BC by elevating leaders, proving it's possible across the province, including folks on the call today. Put another way, we really seek to cultivate a network of leaders, the folks actually demonstrating what's possible. We vet and collect that information, actual project data, and try to mobilize the data and the people's stories to enact change. So like today, we're elevating folks actually doing the work, demonstrating that this is possible. We've really noticed that many of the leaders pushing for better buildings on the decarbonization side are also the ones investigating processes that might be able to help them build these buildings more efficiently, like you've just heard from Jan. So this is by no means to say that all building decarbonization and resilience focused practitioners have been advocates for prefabrication. I think in the chat and what has already been discussed, there has been suspicion or hesitancy about the early days, but I think there's still a massive opportunity that many of those leading in the prefabrication space have also kept emissions and resilience in mind. And we have many of them in our network within the ZEBEX network and the broader ZEIC network, and we're keen to collaborate with folks like Jason and Jan and Alex and many others on the call as we continue to build confidence in both the quality of prefab and modular and panelized construction. So just as evidence of our history in this space, we've chatted with many in our network that are interacting with both. They're pushing decarbonization and high performance homes, and they're also pushing for better processes to get more housing or more retrofits done. So this was a video that we published in May 2024 last year. And it simply is about wanting to build better buildings and do so in a way that both the inhabitants and the people doing that building have a healthier and more comfortable space that they can be proud of. Some of the concepts that overlap between high performance and decarbonization are the factory precision, let's say, leading to easier air tightness and better thermal envelope, controlled assembly resulting in more reliable moisture protection, let's say, material efficiency leading to lower embodied carbon, or parallel workflows, which was brought up earlier, contributing to faster delivery or cost savings. So we can throw that link in the chat to this video. It's 15 minutes. It showcases kind of the wood high performance prefab space in BC. Another is upcoming building tour in Burnaby. It's not just about high performance prefab now. Obviously, there's increasing interest in embodied carbon and addressing material based emissions. And so this project in particular is highlighting more of the regenerative process. So in this project, you'll learn about a project that used reclaimed wood to integrate into the home's prefabricated panels. Another great example of really keen, knowledgeable, ambitious building professionals in BC that's part of the ZEBEX and ZEIC network that want to pursue both prefab and low carbon and resilient buildings. So all that, I'm going pretty fast. Please do reach out if you have follow-up questions. But just to reiterate, ZEIC is an organization that funds capacity building programs, offers grants, and wants to do all this in pursuit of accelerating decarbonization and more equitable communities in BC. ZEBEX is a program mostly focused on capacity building, and we support industry move towards zero emissions resilient buildings in BC. And we do so via cultivating networks of leaders, gathering really great localized data, and mobilizing those stories. And altogether, we care about prefab because we still think the improvement of construction processes are absolutely integral to scaling low carbon and resilient buildings and retrofits. And we want to work together. We feel the narrative is better buildings, as in more efficient to build and heat, cool, and healthier buildings is better together. And many of the industry has declared over the last week, since obviously the budget was announced, it would be a tragedy to accelerate housing construction at the cost of climate. So join our networks, access our mostly free content, collaborate with us on building practical plans, and I'll pass it back over to you, Alex.
We're going to head into the third period now. It's going to be a brief period, um, uh, shorter than a round of boxing. And I just want to hear a couple of points from first Jason on how can we score more goals? Offsite construction generally, specifically modular, specifically panelized. One or two quick points. You really underscored. I don't think we have to go to the local arenas any longer. Any other observations?
Yeah, I think the first and he's don't go back to the government. So I'll make that real quick. Local governments need to stop defining the building types. We just need to open up the ice to all the different players. Second, we need architects and consultants to include modular players in the starting lineup rather than waiting to play us as backups. Oftentimes when a project comes to fruition, we find modular being the player on the bench that says, "Put me in, coach." But the play's already been established and the roster's already established. They need to bring us in at the front end and then discuss the opportunities.
Really good points, Jason.
Yeah, and then just one last one is, really just the financing. Financing for modular is a different finance model, and we really need, Build Canada Homes is talking about it. CMHC has adopted one or two projects and supported the financing that's required, but we need that to be, something that developers and builders can rely on, and that they can finance the projects and the requirements under a modular build.
Jan, anything quick to add on how we can score more goals?
Not a heck of a lot to add to Jason. I just agree. I mean, I think everybody needs to be included just to foster innovation. Just touching on the demand again, we've been building, prototypes. We've been building high performance homes, passive houses, a lot of cubic volume per project, high R value walls with a lot of layers and complexity, and we're managing to survive. And I think I can speak for a lot of other panelization, high performance panelizers, especially, that we're all managing to thrive. And I think now, as we start to see more standardization of single and multifamily, that's just the it's just the beginning of proving the cost competitiveness and just proving that prefab is no longer a bespoke sort of outlier that's a pain in the ass to work with, but it's actually just a really viable solution that has tested results that reduce risk for everybody, get things built faster. That's yeah, just leverage our skills and experience and continue to prove our business case.
Thanks, Jan. I want to follow up on the financing piece, and it's really an area that is an acute challenge, and that's the current approach to drawdowns for financing on construction sites, and they happen when progress is made on site, and that means the manufacturer or the developer or builder or whoever, somebody is stuck with this period when they acquire all of the materials, they're doing the manufacturing, and the cost curves on an offsite project are just so much different than an on-site project. So all of that has to be shouldered at the front end, and we need some kind of bridge financing. And it's either another, a public player jumps in, or there's 100% backing for bridge financing that's provided by the federal government, and it would be such a strategic place for CMHC. They actually have more expertise in this area than any other financer in the country, and it would be good to just transition some of the existing tools that CMHC has and apply them uniquely to the offsite sector. I want to share one point that's related to something that Jan has or Jason has brought up a couple of times, and that's CSA certification. We're running a webinar on January 29th on offsite manufacturing, CSA certification, and local permitting. And we have CSA Group and Fred Tufik from the city of Richmond, who is a real guru in this space, a big believer in CSA certification. And because of some really unique interests and efforts by the city of Richmond, they understand the strengths and the limitations of CSA certification and kind of have some good risk management approaches. So this is a really important debate, and I'm hoping you're all going to be able to make it. We're going to transition now into the third period here. The post game interview. Really good questions that have been coming up, and I'm going to go to a couple of them in our last 5 minutes. Many of them we have been able to answer. One question that was raised by Ranger Pinney is, would it be accurate to assume that the CapEx and overhead that's required is less for a panelized shop than volumetric? And Jason, Jan, are you able to comment on that?
I can comment and tell you that we started our prefab shop in a rented facility with homemade framing tables and standard carpentry tools, and it was a very low investment. And we built a lot of, I believe, quality panels and structures out of a fairly modest shop. So I would think so. Yes, absolutely. I think that there's a huge opportunity to serve a small geographic area, out of a small shop. And in fact, we served a pretty large geographic area. So maybe geography doesn't actually matter. But yes, you can absolutely output high quality product out of a low tech shop. And the interesting thing, would be that now we have a more complex shop with more complex financing and more complex equipment. And the output is more, but it's not enough more. It's not where it's going to be. And so it's a bit of a J curve. I think that you will, with a small modest shop, cap out at output, and at some point it does make sense to invest in automation.
Jason, there have been a few questions around managing the structural integrity of a modular unit in transportation. How is that managed?
In transportation, I mean, to address the structural, and I saw a couple in there floating for seismic and everything else. I mean, we're constructing to the same standards that any traditional stick builder or a panelized builder is building to. We're meeting BC building codes and all their wonderful new seismic requirements as well. And we're meeting those and incorporating them into our design. One of the things with modular, because we do transport and crane and those types of things, we do put in, a little more meat into the bone, if you will. Oftentimes our modules have LVLs or double or triple rim joists just to create that rigidity during transport. And then, behind our drywall, we might have a belt rail that just adds, additional level of rigidity so that we can transport it without too much damage. But overall, not really a concern.
And then kind of riffing off the query is just the seismic concerns and the growing seismic priorities within the code. Is this something that modular and panelized are able to effectively manage?
Yeah, for us, that's not an issue. We do structural review for almost every project that we do. We have yet to come across a code requirement or design that we can't meet. There are some intricacies when it comes to assembling, boxes on site versus, panels where you have easier access to plates and, you can put things behind walls. When we're developing, boxes are coming incomplete. So we have to find unique and innovative ways to create that support.
There's a huge opportunity to go to where the puck is going. And Ryan Watmu asked, how come we're not positioning ourselves to take advantage of the opportunity to build prefab post-secondary institutions, or for that matter, K to 12 institutions, and really get on top of the opportunity, I guess, to standardize some of our construction and grow demand and expand capacity by delivering on those priorities. Jason, Jan, any comments on that?
I think there's
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
I wasn't going to say much. I was just going to say that I don't know why there would be any. I don't know why there'd be any hurdle to there being, a lack of prefab being designed into some of these projects. I think that would be a question for financiers, for school districts, for the architects who are in control of that process. But there should be considered no limitation in possibility for working with modular or panelization, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually think there's a huge opportunity. And if anybody's in a community where they see modular or portables, classroom portables, and you see them move around the community, I think there's a huge opportunity to design a core structure and then utilize modular to move as the demand moves between elementary, middle school, and high school, just utilize that to create and move projects along. There's no reason why it can't be. It just hasn't been adopted yet. And, we seem to think that every project has to be an award-winning project rather than practical.
Good points, Jason, Jan. There was a question around how do we ensure that buildings that are being built are meeting code and bylaw requirements. That's what our next webinar is about. January 29th, you'll all get a link to it emailed to you in the follow-up. This will be available online courtesy of the Zero Emission Building Exchange. It'll be on their multimedia portal. Thanks everybody for coming out to the game. There's a huge amount of work that needs to be done for us to play together and figure out how we can grow our capacity to accommodate offsite construction. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Jason. And Victoria, our tech host as well. We'll see you guys hopefully in January.
Thank you.